So let's talk a little bit about crosstabs. When you first look at a data file, you'll be curious to find out what's in the data. If it's a new one to you, you're like, well, what's in it? How the data organized? What are the connections between the different variables in there? One of the ways to do that would be to do a crosstab. You do a crosstab about with variables that you might think are connected in some way. We might say correlated, but correlated has a very specific statistical meaning, so I'm just saying connected. But in the end, we're probably going to look at correlation as well. So we're going to run crosstabs, and it's easy to run crosstabs once you get the data into Pandas. So if we look at here, we bring in Pandas, and we're going to read in Fremont weather. We're going to print the data frame, and then we're going to do a crosstab between the high temperature and the low temperature. So we'll run this. As you can see here, this is the data frame we have. It has months, has average high, average low, record high, record low, and the average precipitation. Do the crosstab. We're going to do the crosstab between average high and average low. And sure enough, this is what we get. These numbers in here, these are the values from inside the data frame. This is the average highs, and these are the average lows. And these numbers in here are the counts of the number of times where the average low was 42 and the average high was 58. There were two of those. There was one instance where the average low was 45 and the average high was 61. Now, you can sort of see it goes pretty much as expected, that the higher the average high, the higher the average low, which makes sense. So you don't really see anything, and you go, oh, those, if you ran a correlation, I bet they'd be highly correlated. Doesn't really tell you much. But what if you had some numbers out here where the average high was 58 and the average low was like 57? That would be something interesting. So when you run these crosstabs, sometimes looking for something like this, which is say, well, these must be correlated somehow. Of course, the line could be run the other way too. Or you could see something that's out of the ordinary where you say, hey, all these numbers are here, but there's some number out here. Let's investigate why that's going on. So crosstabs are a way of getting a feel for how the variables are connected. So let's look at some more details about how we can do the crosstabs in Pandas. So the next thing, we're going to look at a data file which has some sales data in it. And we're going to look at it with the pivot tables as well, but we're going to do crosstabs here. So we're going to do a crosstab between sales region and unit price, and we're going to do crosstab between sales region and units sold, and you'll see why in a minute. So we run this, and this is a crosstab between sales region and unit price, and sure enough, we got some numbers that make sense in here. And then here is crosstab between sales region and units sold. Well, so this has 3 units sold, there's 4, 5, all the way up to 99, and there's a bunch of data in between here. This crosstab is going to be very short, but very big. So it's really not very useful. Whereas unit price is getting more useful data when we look at it. So sometimes when you run the crosstabs, you'll see, well, that's not very useful. And in some ways, you might have to manipulate the data, group this data into smaller chunks to run the crosstab to have it make sense for you. And we'll learn about grouping data maybe next week or the week after. We're looking at the same data file again. And I'm just showing that you can have more than just 2 variables that you're going to look at. So we're going to do store number and sales region, and then we're going to compare that against units sold. And again, this is just a Python list that we're sending in with these 2 values. Don't get confused with all the square brackets here. It's just a list of store number and sales region. So we run that. You can see we have the store number and then the sales region and then the counts as we go through here. So you could look at the store number and whether the region they were in as you were doing the counts. And again, we're doing it by units sold, so this is a little bit wider, but still a little bit longer, but very wide crosstab. Very useful. We're doing the same thing here. We're doing exactly the same, but now we're adding margins equal to and margin name is equal to total. So what this is going to do is give us totals in both the rows and the columns. You can see the total here. So we've added the total, and again, it's the count. So it's the total count of all the counts that are in here. And I'm showing you here, doing this adds the total values to our data frame. So when we run this crosstab, we're creating a data frame called cross, and doing the total makes those into the data frame. Notice we have not changed our original data that we've read in. We are just creating a second data frame called cross. So we still have the sales data frame and the cross data frame here. Now, what if we want to do, instead of counts, have it give me values for, say, the gross amount of sales? Now, if we run this, it's going to blow up. And the thing is, it doesn't know what to do with those values, because the count of this would be the count of anything else. So it doesn't know what to do. So what we want to do is we want to tell it the function we want to use on this value for our totals, our margins. And we're going to do a mean. So if we run this, actually we should change this to total mean. Yeah, that may mess it up. Let's just do it. All right, so it does the mean here across the rows and the columns going up and down. And again, NaN is not a number, which means these are values that are basically null in Pandas and NumPy versions. So we can do these aggregate functions instead of just the counts on the end. That starts to get more useful. And of course, there are other aggregate functions. I'm going to show you, here's two examples. We're doing the mean and the sum. And of course, we can round to 2 decimal places as well. And sure enough, we get our first one, which is the mean, and then we get the second one, which is the sum. And of course, we could do the count if we did nothing, then you just do the totals. So we could do the count, the mean, and the sum. I'll just show you how to do those as well. So crosstabs are very useful. You're going to do them all the time. It helps you explore the data and start deciding where you want to drill down to see if there's something interesting in your data set.